Tutsu?
Sonia, can you hear me?
Hearing you loud and clear, Mario.
Sonia, can you hear me?
All good, Mario. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
The House Chairperson.
There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. You may be seated. Honorable members, order. The only item on today's order paper is questions addressed to ministers in Cluster 4 Economics. There are 4 supplementary questions on each question. Parties have given an indication of which question their members wish to pose a supplementary question. Yeah. Adequate notice was given to parties for this purpose. This was done to facilitate participation of members who are connecting to the sitting through the virtual platform. The members who will pose supplementary questions will be recognized by the presiding officer. In allocating opportunities for supplementary questions, the principle of fairness, among others, has been applied. If a member who's supposed to ask a supplementary question through the virtual platform is unable to do so due to technological difficulties, the party whip on duty will be allowed to ask the question on behalf of their member. When all supplementary questions have been answered by the executive, we will proceed to the next question on the question paper. Honorable members, order. The first question today, which is question 787, has been asked by the Honorable Nkomo to the Minister of Finance. I welcome the Honorable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Chairperson. The National Treasury plays an oversight role with respect to the implementation of budget in all spheres of government. As part of our oversight, National Treasury regularly engages with the departments on their financial performance. Where possible risks are identified, National Treasury engages departments to ensure that there are mitigating strategies in place to address these risks. In the provincial sphere, this engagement normally happens through the relevant provincial treasury during provincial visits, quarterly meetings. Monthly and quarterly expenditure reports are also tools used to flag potential risks to departments. National Treasury provides reports to executives and legislatures, which may highlight areas of concern regarding financial and/or non-financial performance of departments that requires attention. However, it is important to point out that National Treasury's power is limited when it comes to making departments account for their financial misconduct. Therefore, the role of other institutions or structures like the Auditor General of South Africa and parliamentary committees, etc., is critical to take forward issues that may have raised by National Treasury. The Auditor General of South Africa will be releasing its general report of the 22-23 Public Finance Management Audit Cycle by the end of November 2023, which means this month. While poor quality expenditure is not defined in the PFMA, fruitless and wasteful expenditure is a useful indicator to gauge the extent of losses that the state has incurred over a particular financial period. The honourable member is advised to engage with the General Auditor's report once it is released. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I'm advised that Honorable Mabileza will take charge of the question, follow-up question as asked.
Thank you, House Chair. Minister, the response we have received only refers to provincial departments, and we were looking for a holistic financial cost, including national departments and state entities, given that you are having regular engagements. We note the positive reduction in the poor quality of expenditure in provinces for the year 2022-23 financial year down to 189 million. What we need to know is what this regular engagement tell us, besides putting mitigating strategies to address risk. We'll want to see that National Treasury's quarterly reports to Parliament focus far more on your oversight responsibilities in addressing the poor quality of expenditure. It cannot be that your powers are limited when there is legislation in place to deal with these matters. If we could have your comment on this, please.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Chairperson, I think we would welcome the invitation to engage Parliament on a quarterly basis. The good thing is, on a quarterly basis, for national governments and provincials, we publish what we call Section 32 reports. It would be welcome to engage Parliament in terms of Section 32 reports. A similar publication in respect of local government in terms of Section 71 reports. We will also welcome such an engagement. I think we accept the invitation to engage Parliament on a quarterly basis in using those reports as a basis for engagement.
Thank you. Can we have the second follow-up question from Honorable Alexander?
Thank you very much, Chair. In the current financial year, as a direct consequence to the ANC mismanagement, spending has been revised down by 21 billion. Additional reductions of 64 billion in 2024-25 and 69 billion in 2025-26 are proposed. As a result, departments will be adjusting their budgets down to offset the decrease in budgets. The reduced expenditure on public service means that hospitals are overcrowded, schools are understaffed, roads won't get fixed, and people will struggle. In addition, South Africa has been placed on the grey list because it has insufficient mechanisms to monitor and combat money laundering and terrorism finance activities. What consequence management has been put in place for the departments that are not performing in terms of budget management and cracking down on corruption?
Thank you. The Honorable the Minister.
You know, when we are closer to an election, it's quite easily to craft and frame a question which suggests that you are actually campaigning than asking a question. Because we tabled a medium-term budget policy statement with adjustment. What was the message that was emerging from that statement? what was the message that was emerging from that statement? The message that was emerging from that statement was that as a result of revenue shortfall, which was occasioned by two things. The first one was a result, particularly on the mining revenues, which fell. The second one was excessive claims on VAT, which over the next few years, as we project, again linked to that is growth. Over the next few years is going to reduce our revenue estimates. Nothing about mismanagement has got to do, not an ANC mismanagement, has got to do with the economic performance, simple and nothing else. That's why I'm saying we've got to start from there. The second set of questions, which is our main question of this thing, the rest was politics. The question was, what are the consequence management? Treasury has got no consequence management over in departments. I mentioned that point. The individual ministers, the individual HODs, Parliament has got to hold departments, that's what Parliament exists for, to account. That's the main question I was responding to, that in terms of Section 32, we can provide those reports for Parliament, and Parliament make sure that the relevant accounting officers account to Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you. As we proceed, I will now recognize Honorable Shibambo. Honorable Shibambo. Where's the whip? He's not on the platform. Okay, we'll come back, try to get the answer, but if we pass this question, we are done. Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, now that you told us that your powers are limited, the powers of the AG appears to be limited. Now, what is the reason that despite National Treasury, Auditor General, every politician in this country knowing fully well how corruption works, starting right from a local government level, how contracts are given to the same people at exorbitant prices, not getting value for money, and it's not within the mandate of AG and or Treasury to pick this up. What can we do, and why are we not putting measures to block this? You said in your response to me, Minister, that indeed it is a requirement that they must report on a monthly, but they're not doing it. So how do we close this gap and make sure they are accountable, Minister? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
There are two questions in this loaded in one. The first one is accountability, which I said I'm more than happy to every quarter to report to Parliament on Section 32. And once we get that Section 32, relevant committees make sure that the accounting officers report. The second part of that question, which is related, is corruption. I think let's agree that corruption is a criminal offense. Why can't we report these individuals if we know that a specific individual is corrupt, has done a corrupt conduct? Can't we get the law enforcement agents to deal with those individuals? I think that's the best approach to handle that question. Thank you.
Thank you. ICT, please give the speakers in the House the honor they deserve, not me. The minister is answering questions, but it's my photo on the screens. Please rectify that. Please change. And as we proceed, before we proceed to the EFF, if they are ready, I would like to, since today we are dealing with the questions to the economic cluster, I also want to welcome and acknowledge the presence in the gallery of this Parliament's Audit Committee. Thank you for being with us in here. Thank you. You are welcome. The EFF, are you okay? We pass.
Chairperson,
Yes, Honorable Paulson.
Chairperson,
Mohammed
the
Paul.
Minister,
No,
the
leave it. Paulson, I think Honorable Manyi is
oh,
ready
is
to
he
proceed.
gonna, okay, now then it's
Okay, Honorable Manyi. What is wrong now? Proceed, Honorable Manyi.
Apologies, Chair. The characterization of misguided and incorrect fiscal policy as poor quality of expenditure is a clear demonstration that the governing party stay in office has been too long, and it is time we vote them out in 2024. What is poor quality expenditure? It's either you spend the money for what you budgeted, steal it, or do not spend it. Any other characterization is just foolish. My question is, besides waiting for municipalities struggling with spending of conditional grants throughout the financial year, why does the National Treasury not intervene much earlier to ensure that all conditional grants are spent and are spent on time? Is there capacity in the National Treasury to do this? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
The problem is, I've said this in one sitting here, that there are people who have conditioned themselves that the ruling party is going to be go. If we win, when we win, when we win, in other words, people will shock and claim that the elections have been rigged because you've conditioned yourself to think that you are going to win the elections. And we're going to win. Let me come to your question. We supervise financial management of municipalities, but we don't take responsibility for the management of municipalities. There are institutions such as council and everybody. We don't have authority over a council. We've got to help to manage that council to manage the affairs of the municipality. We keep constant report as a new member of parliament, who's familiarized with this thing. What is called Section 71 reports, which we publish every quarter. You, as members of parliament, you've got to help us to make those politicians account. Don't say that's only a responsibility. Parliament has got a responsibility to exercise that oversight. So once these reports are published, you must also acquaint yourself. We provide much information. So you must exercise oversight.
Thank you. As we proceed to the next question, which is question 821, asked to the Minister of Employment and Labor by Dr. Kado. The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. When the media published a story that stated that there were irregularities regarding an agreement between the UIF, the Department of Employment and Labor, and the Tuja company, the executive authority quickly responded, suspended the implementation of the agreement and payments thereof, and instituted an investigation. And the investigation report was handed over to the executive authority that instituted it. The executive authority and the accounting officer are currently processing the findings of the investigation report. There's nothing in the findings of the report that says I must give it to any other arm of the state. The processing of the report is currently at the point where I'm approaching the court to set aside that agreement and further the report speaks to some implicated employees, wherein the employer-employee internal processes in terms of the Department of Employment and Labor policies, those are still underway. Therefore, until such processes are completed, it may be prejudicial to the listed employees to release that report. Certainly, after having regard to the completion of the internal processes and the related court process, we'll be able to consider the request to share that report publicly. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kara?
Thank you, Chairperson. Minister, the 5 billion rand deal between the Unemployment Insurance Fund and Tuja Capital remains shrouded in mystery. In fact, it has been swept under the carpet from the very beginning, and it is you, Minister, holding the broom. Instead of demonstrating transparency and accountability, you have steadfastly refused to share any meaningful information with the Portfolio Committee since the scandal erupted. You allegedly handpicked a law firm, possibly in violation of the PFMA, to conduct a forensic investigation into the deal. We read about it in the press. The forensic report apparently recommends disciplinary action against the UIF commissioner and other departmental officials. We read about it in the press. The Director General subsequently resigned under a cloud. We read about it in the press. Minister, when are you going to come clean with the Portfolio Committee about this deal and also clear your own name in light of the allegations made against you by Mthunzi Ndwaba, the CEO of Tuja and former chair of Productivity SA, namely that you apparently asked an intermediary to solicit a 500 million rand bribe in order for the deal to go ahead?
Thank you. The Honorable the Minister.
Fortunately, you have been part of the Portfolio Committee, and I did indicate that I will be able to bring that report at the right time, and you were there. But what I'm not going to do, if there are individuals who are implicated, I can't violate those people's rights as per the Labor Relations Act. Otherwise, you are going to come and say there was no consequent management because we might have violated the processes. We might have a very substantive case, but if procedurally we're not following those procedures, we might be found wanting. We've had cases where you lose them because you don't follow the procedural processes. The allegations which you are talking about, I have said, and I want to say, Mthunzi Ndwaba must not run to the social media, must come and put those allegations on record in court and be able to say, this deal is being cancelled because we demanded the kickbacks. Must come and say those things in record in court, and we're ready to interrogate what he's saying, not in the social media. But I want to put it very clearly. I reject those allegations with the contempt that it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Ndabe. Oh,
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for the response. Minister, and thank you for going public on the matter. Having released the outcome of the investigation to present it to court for court to take its course, what steps will you take? If not, why not, for those who are implicated in the report? Thank you.
thank you. Honorable Minister.
It's very clear, Honorable Member, that consequent management says there must be disciplinary steps which are taken. And those who are implicated must come and answer how and why they did this. And if found guilty, there must be sanctions. Those are the steps which I intend following. So the issue of disciplinary processes is very critical in dealing with this particular matter. So I will be following all those steps But those steps must be properly followed in terms of the law, not just in terms of our wishes, because the danger we might want to hurry and have missteps in the process. So definitely the processes have to follow. But unfortunately, those processes have to be led by the DG as the accounting officer. I'm not talking about the resigned DG. I'm talking about the acting DG at the particular moment. Thank you.
Thank you. We proceed to Honorable Dana.
Thank you, House Chair. Honourable Minister, I'm glad that you mentioned consequence management and that you mentioned the resigned DG. And I would like to know, did the Director General of the department, Mr. Tobile Lamati, resign because of this scandal and the findings in the report? And I'm asking this because just as the presentation of the report to the committee is being delayed, so is the report on the DG's resignation as well. And if he did indeed resign because of this mess that happened under your tenure as minister, how will consequence management be affected against him? Because it seems it's just too easy to resign when a scandal is made public and then nothing happens to you. And it is very important, Minister, that an example needs to be made in this case. I look forward to your answer. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
I don't know why he resigned. He put a resignation after we had received the report, but we had not published the report. We will leave that to the courts as to how implicated is he in this particular deal. Because the fact of the matter is, once the person has resigned, is out of the public service, there's no way that you can be able to deal with that person unless there's something which is criminal arising out of that. No, go and read your labor law. If a person has resigned, unless there's something criminal which is arising out of that, but we're going to leave that to the courts to determine. So that the matter now is at the level of the court. We will watch very closely how the court is pronouncing on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Mkonto.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, in this matter, you are implicated as an individual, specifically on the background activities that were taking place in as far as this 5 billion matter is concerned. What are you planning to do to clear your name? And are you going to do that out of your own pocket, or you are going to use state's funds to clear your name? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
I'm not sure what you mean when you say I'm implicated. I'm not sure. What do you mean when you say in the Tuja deal I'm implicated, when I'm the one who stopped it, when I'm the one who started investigating it? I am not sure what you're talking about. I am acting as an executive authority, not as an individual in that. So the cost would be in terms of my official capacity. If there's something which involves me as an individual, then you can talk like you are talking now. But insofar as I'm concerned, I'm acting as an executive authority. Thank you.
Thank you. May we remind members about using alleged, because some matters really, you cannot raise that a person is implicated. You must bring a substantive motion for that. So let me just stop it here and say, let me caution that certain issues need substantive motions. Don't conclude. Thank you. As we proceed now, we proceed to question 828, asked by the Honorable Keza to the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy. Honorable Minister.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members.
Let me start off by agreeing, rare occasion, with chairs of the EFF, that this thing of saying renewables are cheap is an assumption that is not proven. I want to start there. I follow the cost of bid window 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In bid window 5, there was an attempt to reduce those prices to 47 cents a unit. Majority of those bidders couldn't reach financial close. So it's a myth that we must deal with as we go. Now, to answer the question, tariffs are derived from integrated power system. In other words, they are comprised of energy from nuclear, from coal, from solar, from wind, from hydro, from diesel. All those costs are integrated and averaged. And they are approved as a cost by NERSA. And therefore, there is no cost from IPPs that goes to the poor or the working person. It is the integrated price as approved by NERSA that goes there, which is averaging all of them. If we had a choice, we would allow working people to get the price that we get from nuclear. That is the lowest cost in the currently that we have in the system. So we are cognizant of high electricity price that the country is currently experiencing. Consequently, the structure of electricity is undergoing reform to improve efficiency of the electricity industry, including participation of new players. There's an assumption, it's an economic assumption that once there's competition, price is going to come down. That is an assumption. It's not a fact at this point in time. As you open competition, we assume that prices are going to come down. It's not always the case. Now, a suite of financial support measures that were announced by the National Treasury in 2003 budget statement are being implemented. And further to this, indigenous households are beneficiaries of basic electricity provision. That program is aimed at assisting the poor and the bottom end of earners in society. That is where we are, and therefore, the free basic electricity is fully funded by the national fiscus. So the state does take responsibility to cushion the poor end of society from electricity prices. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Kaiser.
No, thank you very much, undertaking. Taking into account what you have said pertaining to the cushion that the state has towards the poor, 82% of the residents of Mhlongo, giving you a scenario in local government, in OR will depend on these free units, Minister. And really taking into account what you have just said, there is over 2 million that are outside that indigent list. And the burden of introducing the power producers, independent power producers who are profit driven and not giving value to the grid, and while they are generating a lot in terms of profit, as said by the people of Mhlongo, what is the relationship between the above issues of unbundling of Eskom and the roadmap to Eskom, and how will it ultimately affect the working class in terms of how it is right now? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
The original question was on the impact on the poor. And those poor are beneficiaries of the free electricity tariff. Now, he's raising a new question now. What do we do about those who are earning above indigence? There is no policy that covers that because when you are above indigency, the assumption is that you are capable of paying. And therefore there it is expected that you pay for the service that you receive. But the poor receive free basic service subsidy from the state. And all that money is paid by the fiscus. So the question that is asked now has nothing to do with the original question of what plans are there to help the poor. It is talking about now, how do you help now the middle class? It's a totally new question.
Akandivango minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kesa. No,
Chairperson.
Honorable Kesa, you don't have to do that. Don't do that. I think
Okay,
the minister, thank you. Let me just remind you that on Rule 142.6, it tells us that the follow-up question must be directly from the original question. Now the minister spotted that one. Thank you. We proceed. Let's proceed to Honorable Volmarans.
Thank you, House Chair, and thank you to the Minister for the original answered question. Honorable Minister, since ESCOM's long-term financial sustainability remains dependent on the migration towards cost-reflective tariffs, how will the department ensure that ESCOM's desire for cost-effective tariffs reflects the declining cost of renewable energy sources from independent power producers as a portion of totally primary energy cost and balance the need for ESCOM's financial position while protecting the poor and working class consumers against high cost reflective tariffs? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
I'm known to be a believer of a multi-pathway in dealing with the transition. I don't believe that we move from coal to renewables. I think you follow the multiple pathways, and therefore any cost that accrues to the poor will be a function of that multiple pathway. It will take into account nuclear, it will take into account coal, it will take into account solar, it will take into account wind, it will take into account hydro, and many other pathways. So we cannot have an aim of just dealing with one technology in dealing with a complex problem that impacts on the poor. So I think the RP as it is, I don't know the renewed one, the revised one, what will it say? The RP as it stands encourages us to have a multi-pathway to electricity tariff, and that will help us bringing down the cost. And if we increase, for example, the component of nuclear, which is giving us energy at 40 cents a unit now, it means that it can impact more positive. And you can go to the various tariffs and see which one is bringing the cost down. So it is not about just focusing on what renewables are doing. It is about the multi-pathway of energy sources that the country must have access to. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Msimang. Nkosi Kwebekhulu, are you taking the question?
Thank you, as Chair. I'm taking it for Prof.
Thank
Simang.
you. Proceed.
Minister, has the department ever entered into any agreement with foreign governments that have faced the same similar energy crisis and have successfully addressed it? If not, why not? If so, what are the relevant days? Mhlekazi, akusiyena oqala uhulumeni waSouth Africa olomnyango wakho obe neyinkinga ze-energy. Amanye amazwe asekaba nazo iy'nkinga, ey'nkingeni akwazi
Sizongena kulo mbuzo.
owakho umnyango wenze njani?
Angazi yazi. Angazi nami. Batheni? Bakubizela.
Hi, man. Yo, who's that? Christian who? Oh, he's the one. He's Professor himself. Professor Msimang, relax. Inkosi Kwebekhulu is busy with your question. Minister, did you get the question? Okay, thank you.
I
Proceed.
did get the question. Comparative studies are a norm in any government worth itself. That when you go through a difficult process, you go and look into other countries. As it is the case that other countries do look at us. Let me give you an example. Car powership is a no-go area here. But when you go to Ghana or you go to Cote d'Ivoire or you go to all those countries in the West Coast, in the western part of the continent, they all use car powership and it works for them. When you come here, you say that solution has worked in country X, Y, and Z. It is up to us as a team to accept interventions. I can see that Honorable Malam is laughing me off. He can laugh me off. The reality of the matter is we don't like solutions that are comparative with other countries. We think that we are holier than thou, and therefore we can breathe fresh air in darkness. That is our belief. And it doesn't work in real life. So I agree with you, because Uguti, it is important to do comparative studies with other countries, and we're doing that on an ongoing basis.
Thank you. The Honorable Boshoff. Honorable Boshoff. FF Plus, he is online, yes, I'm told. Anyone from the FF Plus? I pass. We now proceed to the next question, which is question number 788, asked by the Honorable Mulala to the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies. The Deputy Minister, I think, is the one who will be responding according to what I have. Yes, the Deputy Minister will respond. What happened to the Deputy Minister? They said she's in the...
I'm here.
Oh, they wrote here that you will be in the Good Hope Chamber, Honorable GM, but proceed. We are now on question 788 as asked by the Honorable Mulala. Honorable Mapulan, GM.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, Chairperson. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. What is wrong? You appear and you disappear. Black Mampatile.
I'm saying, unfortunately, I won't be able to be an activity, Chairperson, but I can hear you. May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, Honorable Mulala, for the question. The response is as follows. The financial situation of the South African Post Office is in a critical stage, and the Post Office is unable to meet its financial obligations, with 12 billion owing to creditors and costs significantly exceeding the revenue. Therefore, South African Post Office Business Rescue Plan proposes a reduction of the branch network to about 600 branches for the interim. However, this reduction, which takes into account branches designated as universal service obligation, will attempt to ensure that these branches, one, remain open, two, these branches are equitably located geographically. Furthermore, the South African Post Office will negotiate with Post Bank to transfer some of its branches, such as the Post Bank, such that the Post Bank can operate its own independent network in rural and remote areas. Initially focusing on stabilizing the entity, the Business Rescue Plan embarks on the implementation of several modernization programs, including replacing legacy systems, upgrading SAPO's point of sale system, upgrading its data centers, and launching a series of digital postal and financial products. SAPO's courier, freight, and financial business segment will undergo complete modernization to ensure its services and products are in line with the current market trends. Thank you very much, House Chair.
Thank you. The Honorable Mlal.
Thanks, House Chair, and thanks, DM, for the comprehensive response. DM, how much, if any amount, of the 2.4 billion bailout funds from National Treasury have been utilized to reduce SAPO's liabilities and ensure that no further branches are closed down?
The Honorable GM.
Thank you very much, House Chair. The 2.4 billion, which has been allocated to SAPO as a bailout, is currently being utilized during the business rescue process. There's drawdowns that have been made by the business rescue practitioners to cover the operational liabilities of the post office, which, as we said, is currently
Honorable GM, if you can just switch off your video, I think you are what do you call it? Our bandwidth. It's a big week.
Under administration. So the detailed cost of how much. All right, let me switch off, will help.
Yeah.
I was saying, Chairperson, that the actual status will become available once the process has been concluded. But just to say that the business rescue plan has been finalized on Thursday last week and published. So it will be up to the creditors to vote on the business rescue plan. And that meeting is scheduled to take place on the 7th of December, which is next week.
Okay. Thank you very much. Earlier on, I welcomed the committee, Audit Committee of Parliament, and I looked at the wrong people. They are here now. So I was told you are here and you were not here yet, but otherwise you are welcome. Thank you. Honorable Mazzoni.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Deputy Minister, a sign of the times, I think, that you can't connect yourself to Parliament. But be that as it may, SAPO's business plan was in fact released last week, as you said. DM, could you tell us what your plan of action is as 6,000 employees are set to lose their jobs and a further 420 branches are set to close? What are we going to do to mitigate this waiting disaster? And SAPO requested 3.8 billion rand from the Fiscus for a further bailout. Thankfully, the Fiscus said no, Treasury said no. What is your intention now? And do we actually face the possibility of having a South Africa with no post office?
Thank you. Honorable Mazzoni, I think you are aware that you have asked 4 questions and Rule 1427 says a follow-up question should only be 1. So DM, whatever you respond, it's your prerogative. Proceed.
Thank you very much, House Chair. We are more than capable of responding to Honorable Mazzoni on all the 4 questions that he has posed. Maybe just to say, Chairperson, yes, indeed, I've got some connectivity challenges because we're experiencing load shedding where I am. So it's something that I cannot help with, Honorable Mazzoni. But on your substantive questions, indeed, the plan, although it's supposed to be still confidential to be voted on by the creditors on the 7th, but as we know, the details of the plan has been out. And one of the key issues that the business rescue practitioners are raising is the unsustainable cost of staff. The proportion of staff expenditure to the revenue is quite unsustainable. Just to give an example, in the report, they are saying that the staff cost about 150% of the revenue of the entity, which is something that is quite unsustainable. But they have had discussions with the recognized trade unions, and the plan is out there. The idea here, Honorable Mazzoni, is to put the post office on a sustainable pedestal, meaning that we need to look at all the costs that are impacting on the viability of the post office. And quite rightly so, the business rescue practitioners have identified this. It's up to the creditors to vote on it. The second issue is on the branches. There is a proposed reduction. It's not a very big reduction, but it's a reduction that is aimed at making sure
Thank you, Honorable GM. Unfortunately, we only have 2 minutes to respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Tambo.
Thank you very much, House Chair. I think let's begin by saying it's ironic that the DM said the reduction in prospective closures of post offices is minimal, considering that we know already 48% of the post offices of South Africa have been closed due to debt. But that's not the point. I think the Honorable Mulala asked a simple and very basic question that is in line with the question I wanted to ask, is that how much exactly has been spent of the 2.4 billion which was allocated by Treasury to SAPO to, number one, deal with its debt, and number two, lead its modernization, and what type of modernization has happened since the bailout of 2.4 billion was given to SAPO? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable GM.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Unfortunately, Honorable Tambo, we don't have the details of what has been spent up to so far. The business rescue practitioners are engaged in a process of trying to rescue the entity, and at an appropriate time, they will account, because these are public funds at any particular point. These funds will have to be accounted for. But that report is not available as yet. Just to say, Chair, as you know, when an organization is going through a business rescue,
Oh, Akbar alert, Mulder, alsjeblieft. Go on, Honorable GM, sorry.
So I was saying, Chair, the rules are such that the business rescue practitioners will prepare a plan, and this plan will detail how all the creditors will receive their payment. So if any of the creditors gets to be paid before the plan is voted on, that will amount to, that will be against the rules, because the rule will allow that the plan must be put on the table so that the creditors can see how much can they be paid for that. What has been used, the drawdown has been used for the operational expenses of the post office to keep it afloat, not to pay any of the creditors whose debt has been confirmed. Now, I say the reduction has been minimal. When you look at the cost of running this in the interim, you would realize that the proposal to reduce some of the branches, to negotiate with the post bank so that the post bank can be able to operate its own branch network, and later on, when the business becomes viable, more and more branches are going to be reopened. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The Honorable Majosi.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. Honorable Minister, one of the reasons that we were cited for SAPO lending in its current position is the entity's failure to adopt digital development. With that being said, knowing that the turnaround strategy of the SAPO says that we are looking at the SAPO of the future, what are the programs in place to make sure that we digitally upskill current post office employees and those that will be employed in the future? Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable DM.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Indeed, Honorable Majosi, you are right in saying that one of the things that impacted negatively on the future viability of the post office has been the impact of digitization. The impact of the internet has made communication through letter post redundant, so to speak. So this has had a significant impact, not only in our own postal office, but globally. All the global postal operators are struggling under this. So all of them are transitioning to embrace the digital era. What we have done is to come up with a strategy that we call the Post Office of Tomorrow, which strategy is seeking to reposition the post office to become a number of things, to play in the e-commerce space, to become a logistic hub, to become an authentication authority, especially in this era of digital identity. So we're repositioning the post office in line with the strategy of tomorrow to not only to focus on the letter post, which is still important, but it's something that is declining, to focus on other business areas in the economy. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. As we proceed to question 807, asked by the Honorable Singh to the Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chair, and thank you to Honorable Singh for the question. A just transition to a low carbon economy will benefit all South Africans by driving green growth, creating jobs, and contributing to energy security while addressing the serious threat of climate change. The Just Energy Transition Investment Plan for the 5-year period 2023 to 2027 sets out the scale of need and investments required to achieve the decarbonization commitments of our nationally determined contribution, which outlines the rate at which South Africa plans to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions and represents our fair contribution to the goals of the Paris Agreement. The JET implementation plan confirms that South Africa's resolve to manage the just energy transition is at a pace and scale and cost that is consistent with the country's socio-economic development path, needs, and affordability, and reaffirms that the just transition incorporating distributive, restorative, and procedural justice is at the center of South Africa's transition to a low-carbon economy. With regard to the question 2, which speaks specifically about interventions required, I can say to the honorable member that the skilling, reskilling, and upskilling of workers is essential to the transition workers from existing jobs to new opportunities. 5 flagship interventions require financing and support. Firstly, the establishment of a 3-tier JET skills ecosystem to coordinate and align skills activities across multiple institutions and stakeholders, which is in line with the Department of Higher Education and Training's National Skills Master Plan 2030. Secondly, the establishment of skills development zones focused on 3 core value chains, namely in Mpumalanga for renewable energy and transmission, in the Eastern Cape for new energy vehicles, and in the Northern Cape anchored in local education institutions in partnership with business to support local economic development initiatives linked to the green hydrogen value chain. JET skills needs assessments for each of these 3 value chains and the implications thereof for tertiary institutions, capacity building for government and key government institutions, and lastly, support for foundational skills development involving upskilling of teachers and integrating sustainable energy concepts into school curricula.
Is that one? Thank you. I'm looking at those that are standing when the minister is busy. Honorable Mashir. Yeah, to step in the process. We proceed now, Honorable Singh.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and thank you very much, Honorable Minister. One would have thought that you would have been on a jet to Dubai by now for COP, but I see you are in the house. I think it shows your commitment. Perhaps you're jetting off this evening to do justice for us and the country in terms of ensuring that the other countries, particularly the developed countries, contribute to the just transition that we want to adopt here in South Africa. Minister, sometimes I get the impression, talking to people, that they feel that the just energy transition is just about finding socioeconomic opportunities for those who would be deprived when coal mines are closed down. And that seems to be the general trend, that people think that that's what it is all about. But it goes beyond that. And as you indicated, it goes to issues like skills transfer, it's skills development. But having said that, you know, I'm always passionate about South Africans, particularly disenfranchised South Africans, having equity opportunities in renewable energy sources and methodologies that we may use. Whilst we want to be employed, we also want to be owners. And I want to know if there's any aspect of the plan that would ensure that ordinary South Africans living in Mpumalanga and some of those other areas, when new methodologies are introduced to replace coal-fired power stations, whether they will benefit, because I think it's very, very important for us to have that. And I see that international partners are also pouring in a lot of money at very low interest rates into South Africa, particularly the Western countries. And I think there should be conditionalities. But having said that, Honorable Minister, my question is, you know, those of us who are in the environmental space, including yourself and the members of the Portfolio Committee, we want to jealously guard.
Honorable Singh, your 2 minutes is up. Thank you.
Will you do that on our behalf, Honorable Minister? Thank you, Honorable Chair.
2 minutes, you okay, ma? Proceed, Honorable
Thank
Minister.
you, House Chair. I didn't really get what he wants me to do, but let me just...
Let me help you, Honorable Minister. A member can make a statement or just an opinion. So do respond in any way, because the minutes were over anyway.
Thank you, House Chair. I think the issue that I want to pick on is the point that he makes about opportunities for those in our society to participate in new green sectors of the economy. And I think that when we look at the issue of justice, when we talk about restorative justice, we're not just talking about trying to create opportunities for workers who might be currently in the coal value chain. We're also talking about the fact that because of the history of this country, many people have been excluded from economic participation and also from economic ownership. And one of the investment portfolios in the Just Energy Implementation Plan is into creating a whole new development trajectory for the province of Mpumalanga. And central to that is the question of economic diversification, transformation, and industrialization in areas such as microgrids, agrivoltaic cells, and so on, so that we can promote new owners in the energy value chain, and so that marginalized communities should also benefit from the opportunities of green investment and green growth, not just as workers, but as owners. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mhlonishwa Dlamini. ME.
House Chair, can we take the question for Honorable Lamini?
Pleasure.
Thank you, House Chair. Minister, how would the agreement on the Transition Committee of the United Nations Framework, Convention on Climate Change, on the operationalization of the Climate Loss and Damage Fund, fasten the just transition to low carbon economy, given the socio-economic challenges that the country is facing? And what is the plan in place to integrate skills between new and experienced employees in the fossil fuel sector? Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chair. I think the first thing that one would want to say is that the Loss and Damage Fund is really a separate instrument under the UNFCCC that really aims to deal with the impact of climate change on our lives and on our built-in infrastructure. So it's not directly related to the issue of the just transition. But I think that really what the purpose of the skills development component of the Just Energy Transition Implementation Plan, the purpose of that is to ensure that those who are vulnerable and marginalized should not carry an unjust burden of the gradual transition to other forms of energy generation. I think what we know is that most of these workers are highly skilled, they are well paid, they have medical aids and pensions, and if they are to find other forms of employment, they would want to find those forms of employment in industrial jobs. They don't want to be offered casual work in tourism or other activities. They want industrial work. And that's why the emphasis on the Mpumalanga transition plan is all about looking at other forms of industrialization in Mpumalanga, which, as I said, we're already looking at the issue of the assembly of agrivoltaic cells, the assembly of microgrids, and also at the issue of agro-processing, because that will create industrial jobs of a similar order to the jobs that exist already. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pardon my pronunciation. Honorable Bryant. Is that so?
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Minister, according to the Climate Finance Landscape Report, which came out today, Western Europe accounts for 57% of international climate finance flows to South Africa. And we hope that these relationships are not put in jeopardy by the growing closeness between this government and countries such as Russia and Iran, which themselves have made little to no significant contribution to South African climate financing up till now. While the financing for the JETP is an essential part of diversifying our energy mix, local governments such as the DA-led City of Cape Town are already taking steps to roll out ambitious projects to increase access to renewable energy. And Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis is managing to do this by aiming to create what we refer to as prosumers, who are able to generate their own green electricity and sell the excess back into the grid at a profit. The rooftop solar industry is just one of the many contributors to the 200,000 jobs created by the DA-led City of Cape Town this year. There is, however, now a massive challenge to many industries coming down the road in the shape of the EU's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or CBAM, which could see many sectors—
Thank you very much, Honorable Bryant. Your time is up.
That wasn't 2 minutes, ma'am.
No, 2 minutes. Okay, that is a rule. Check your rules under 142. There's a difference between the first follow-up question and the subsequent ones. Honorable Minister.
Honorable Bryant, I think we would be agreed that South Africa must fight CBAM with everything we have. It is a measure that is opposed to the principle enshrined in the UNFCCC of common but differentiated responsibilities and capabilities. It is an affront to the World Trade Organization because it is unilaterally imposed and not negotiated. And I think that we must all agree that this is something that would have a devastating effect on our economy, on our workers, and on shared prosperity. We must fight it.
Thank you. Honorable Heron.
Thank you, House Chair. Thank you, Minister. Minister, the first study on the, or social impact study on the Kamati power station closure occurred in 2020. And then in May last year, the first alternative energy project began construction. But 5 months later, the plant was shut down, leaving thousands of employees without income. This is obviously if this was to be a trend, this would be damaging to the reputation of the just transition and could foster an anti-environment and anti-green energy sentiment, which is obviously not what we want. So are there any plans to assist the employees who did not experience a just transition in the Kamati decommissioning? Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Let me first say that workers directly employed in Kamati did not lose their jobs. They are highly skilled workers. They were transferred to other plants. But the people who were severely disadvantaged as a result of the closure of that plant were all of those who existed in the broader ecosystem and who would have been providing services to that plant. It's not a good guinea pig study. And it certainly does not enshrine the concept of justice as adopted by Cabinet and as adopted by the Presidential Climate Commission. I have recently had a meeting with the World Bank where I have brought to their attention the study which the Climate Commission did on that decommissioning process. And I have asked them to work together directly with that community to identify projects and programs that that community would like to see that will create alternative livelihoods and will also deal with some of the socioeconomic consequences of that unjust transition. And during the conversations we have had, I have stressed to them that although that program was not part of the JET implementation projects at all, it was a separate project, its outcomes are material for the confidence that all of us can possibly have in the justice of the transition, and it needs to be fixed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mamwatse, nko tlhokomele gadget ya gago. We now proceed to question 789, asked by the Honorable Mahlo to the Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair, and thanks to the Honorable Member for her question, which is indeed important because all of us do eat chicken. There are few who may not, but majority of us here, we do eat chicken and eggs. The issue relates to the cost of poultry products. And Honorable Member, just to say, one of the things that are major inputs in the poultry production, particularly chickens, is soya, maize, as well as sunflower. And unfortunately, these are what drive the prices in the poultry production, particularly soya, because South Africa, even though it produces soya, it actually exports a majority of it. And then the industry has to buy as imports, which then increases the prices. So what we've been doing is to actually engage the input suppliers, which is your maize producers, millers, as well as your soya producers and sunflower, to make sure that we expand the area of production such that there's readily available market for such products for our industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Mahlo.
Thank you, Honorable Chair.
I just wanted to ask to the minister as a follow-up question. Has the department investigated the possibility of cheaper feedstock for the poultry sector? And has the department engaged in research to find alternative feeds, sources which are more affordable and produced locally in South Africa? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Martha, for the follow-up question. It is important for me to indicate that in the past 2 years, we've worked together with the industry as well as labor to really look at how we can develop the poultry industry in South Africa in a manner that is sustainable for both export and also imports where necessary. We know at the moment that we have got more imports because of the cheaper cost of production in other regions. Similarly, we also have particular imports of various parts or cuts in the meat that South African eats rather than in the other jurisdictions. For instance, South Africans like more the drumstick and thighs, whereas other jurisdictions, they would eat white meat. But unfortunately, the South Africa's poultry industry strategy is to produce the entire meat, and even its packaging on selling, they would not do the segmentation, which actually works well if you want to get into the export industry. As part of that discussion, I've indicated the expansion for area of production of the feedstock. The question you're asking, Honorable Member, is whether we have done some research on alternative feedstock that would assist in bringing down the cost of production for poultry. I must say that the current assessment working with the industry is that the best input is still soya and maize and sunflower. We can explore other opportunities of looking at what may be others, but what is important is that those players who are in the industry must be comfortable about those alternatives, as well as the consumers must feel comfortable as to what goes into the meat.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mamba Mbama.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Minister, you didn't answer the second part of Honorable Mahlo's question, and which talks to the strategy, but I assume that you do have a strategy in your department. The question I'd like to ask you is, in that strategy for expanding poultry farming in the Republic, what percentage of the grant component in the blended finance scheme is aimed at assisting small and medium-sized poultry producers to enter the sector, thus breaking the barriers caused by high input costs, such as feed, which accounts for almost 70% of total production costs? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mpapama, for that follow-up question. Indeed, you are right. The Poultry Master Plan is the strategy that we are using in order to be able to grow the poultry industry. And within that, we are looking at growing the small scale poultry farmers and actually look at local production networks. We know, and we've been speaking with the industry on the contract farming, which is done by your bigger companies such as Astral and others who are actually working with smaller producers on contract to actually be able to offer them market access in their industry. We're also looking at how we could supply affordable protein, which is another element that will go into the feed, but produced locally as opposed to import. With respect to blended finance, the Department of Agriculture put 1 billion the last 2 years, and IDC complemented that with 1 billion. And that was mostly targeted on 2 sectors, poultry and livestock. So in terms of percentage, one may then check how the IDC, who is one of the partners with whom we're working on in this program, has determined the percentage between livestock and poultry farming. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Motlhomphegi Matthias.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, there are multiple challenges that constrains the poultry sector in the country. The rising feed costs is just but one of the many. These challenges include import penetration and dumping of chickens into the South African market, rising electricity tariffs, access to reliable supply of electricity, exchange rate fluctuations, and amongst others, access to finance and markets, especially for small-scale producers. How does the Minister Department, together with the colleagues in the executive, intend to address these challenges in order to protect the South African poultry sector and to offset the long-term industry sustainability, job creation, and food security, to improve the competitiveness of the various segments of the value chain, especially those aimed at lowering feed costs? Honorable Chairperson, thank you so much.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair and honorable members. The question which has now been posed relates to the broader challenges that the poultry sector faces. Issue of energy, as honorable member has indicated, the issue of dumping, and I would add issues of animal health. With respect to addressing the issue of energy, which is another primary input into the production cost of poultry, we have launched, and it is in operation, a blended finance scheme with the Land Bank on the Agro Energy Fund. That we worked with the industry to look at how we can assist those participants in the poultry production to move away to other alternative energy sources as opposed to relying on Eskom in particular. We have been working together with the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition to address the issue of anti-dumping, which has actually been done already by the Minister of DTIC to make sure that we prevent or reduce the level of dumping in our industry. On the animal health, as we've seen with the avian flu challenge, we are working with the industry to improve the biosecurity on our poultry farms and also generally to other farms to make sure that indeed we improve the capability of our farmers in this commodity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mhlonishwa Inkosi Cebekhulu.
Ngiyabonga Mhlaswa, sorry. Ngiyabonga Sihlalo. Mhlonishwa nephuzu elibalekelwayo ngokusebenza eminyangweni. Kuliqiniseko esingeliphike ukuthi lo mkhiqizo ongena ngaphakathi usuka emazweni la khona ohulumeni bakhona bebaxhasile abalimi. Izwe lakithi lona libonakala lingenakho ukubukela kuthina baxhaswa abalimi ukuze bekwazi nabo ukukhiqiza umkhiqizo wabo ngokulingana nalamazwe angaphandle. Ngokomnyango wakho Mhlonishwa, ubona ukuthi sixazululo sini esingasiza ekuthenini nalabo bakithi abasanda kungena emkhakheni wezolimo nokukhiqiza kakhulukazi abakhiqiza izinkukhu bakwazi ukungena nabemakethe, kungabi nje ukuthi bona badasela thina emakhaya nasemholweni ngoba usibona sigijima nezinkukhu emholweni mabantu behola. Ngiyabonga.
Sithokoze Mhlonishwa, ungaqhubeka.
Ngiyabonga lunga ehloniphekile. Impela lo mbuzo owubuzayo futhi uphawula ubaluleke kakhulu mayelana nokuthi uma sibheka iNingizimu Afrika ngonyaka ka-1996 uma singena siba ingxenye ye-World Trade Organization, ziningi izinto esazenza engingasho ukuthi zibe nokuthikameza ikakhulukazi abalimi abasafufusayo. Ukubeka kwethu engingasho ukuthi izinqumo kulela komiti lomhlaba lezokuhwebelana sasuke sanciphisa kakhulu amazinga okuthi singakwazi ukuxhasa abalimi bethu. ikakhulu lokho okubizwa phecelezi ngolikaJoe ulimi i-domestic support. Lokho-ke siyakureviewa manje sinamanye amazwe ngobe akuthina kuphela izolo nje ngikhuluma bengisemhlanganweni sikulo leli komiti le-WTO labe sinqoma khona ukuthi njengoba singakaliqedi ingxoxo yokuthi sivule ezolimo ikakhulukazi emhlabeni wonke trade liberalization ku-agriculture kumele sibuyele emuva ikakhulukazi amazwe asafufusayo njengathi siphinde sibheke ukuthi sihlaziye ukuthi singavuleleka kanjani njengamazwe ukuze sikwazi ukuthi sixhase ngokufanele abalimi bethu ukuze bakwazi nabo ukuthuthuka. Ngiyabonga.
Sithokoze Mhlonishwa. The next question is question 819, asked by Dr. George to the Minister of Finance. The Honorable the Minister.
Undithatha amachansi ke lo. Kodwa ngizamphendula ngesilungu eside into ebefana ndiphendule ngesentence enye. As the honorable member will know, the Minister of Finance uses the annual February budget as a tool that outlines government and cabinet decisions on the fiscal framework, which includes, among other things, expenditures, borrowing, and tax measures. Every budget goes through a process of consultation and authorization within the government structures, such as the Minister's Cabinet on the budget, and ultimately approved by government before being finalized. As such, no prior definitive guidance on which tech instruments will be subject to potential increases can be provided before such a processes are undertaken, and the budget is tabled before the National Assembly. In the medium-term budget policy statement, the minister has already given an indication that moderate revenue increases will be introduced to support fiscal consolidation. Also note that government does not ordinarily use the occasion of the medium-term budget policy statement as a platform to provide any specific measures related to taxes. As indicated in the recent medium-term budget policy statement, government has proposed only moderate tax revenues measures to raise additional revenue of 15 billion in the 24-25, given the extent of fiscal consolidation required. Ungandibuzi ke uba ndizayithatha below 15 billion. No, andizokuxelela. The amount represents about 0.81% of the revised gross tax revenue estimated for 24-25 of 1.854 billion. It is not anticipated that the measures that will be considered will have substantial impact on the economy. It is customary that tax proposals which provide definitive guidance to the honorable member is seeking are only tabled in the February budget, and there should be no expectation that it will be done otherwise unless in exceptional circumstances like those that prevailed during the COVID pandemic. In short, wait for the 21st of February when we table the main budget. I should have said that sentence only, but I decided because the parliament rules can do
On Dr. George.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your very comprehensive reply that was longer than one sentence. I did ask the question because battling South African households are deeply concerned about putting enough food on the table and obviously concerned about having to pay more tax next year. But yes, as you say, we will have to see what happens in February, but certainly we would not support any tax increases. By not being clear on tax policy, government is creating uncertainty over revenue expectations. We know that government met with the Reserve Bank governor to discuss access to the gold and foreign exchange contingency reserve account, currently valued at approximately 459 billion rand. The governor has already said that accessing this reserve
Chair, a smooth minister.
I thought that was the only one.
Honorable Minister, yeah.
Is it a problem with the,
Kulumela kuwo mpopolo yokude nawe.
oh,
Mr. Singh, your hand is up. Is it about the audibility also?
Yes. I don't know if
I
we
think we are
can hear you now. Thank
rectifying
you.
that. Okay.
Thank you.
the point is, there's no truth that there's no clarity about fiscal policy because we have not announced tax measures beforehand. It has never happened. It has never happened. And no one has ever complained about the absence of clarity about fiscal policy because South Africans are aware that tax proposals are tabled once and once only during the budget process. That's the first point. The second point, I'm not going to answer the question whether I'm going to raid the Reserve Bank or not. What the Honorable Minister is referring to is contained in Section 28 of the Reserve Bank Act. That act clearly stipulates that the foreign exchange reserves, any excess of those reserves belong to the National Treasury. We have not made any statement, even in the medium budget policy statement, to the extent that there are excesses reserves, we have not made a statement. We're muted on that point for now. Lala, awuphumleke mntasekhaya suyingqamele izinto uzingqamele zonke.
Sithokoze mhlonishwa. Honorable Maswanganyi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Minister, given that the principal objective of taxation is for government to generate sufficient revenue to finance policy objectives, which derive from a popular majority mandate that it is given, and as is reflected in the MTBBS, public hearings into revenue proposal this year once again have raised the prospects and ability of raising far greater revenue. Why is it that the Treasury has not opted through SARS to be far more aggressive in raising revenue from the identified sources that it has at its disposal? I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable the Minister.
We made the point in tabling the budget that there has been an increase in aggressive collection of taxes by SARS, in particular, the increase in compliance by SARS. So that is a product of this aggressive stance taken by SARS. In this financial year, we have provided SARS with R1 billion, whose main activity is to achieve that aggressiveness referred to by Honorable Maswanganyi. They have given us a specific target, which I'm not at liberty at the moment to disclose. At the appropriate time, we will disclose that target. And thank you for asking that question. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one is the Honorable Shimambo.
Chair, can I take the question on his behalf?
Proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Matibomte, the market uncertainty and investment planning challenges are not caused by economic policy ambiguities and the absence of a definitive guidance. The National Treasury is very clear in its line of march, and that is privatize SOEs, outsource as much as you can, including basic essential services such as water, sanitation, housing, and other services. This is very clear from the Vulindlela program of government that has now been adopted. What we need to know, however, and this talks to
Honorable Ntobongwane. Please.
ANC people must be taught etiquette. This is very clear from the Vulindlela program that is now adopted by government. What we need to know, however, Minister, is this, and this talks to ambiguities that can affect consumer confidence crisis. Is the minister and the National Treasury saying that cabinet, the ANC, His Excellency the former President Mbeki, and all concerned about the
Your
rent
time is up.
currency manipulation are all wrong, and it's only National Treasury that is right?
I'm trying to figure out, Honorable Chairperson, how all of that fits to the tax proposal. I'm trying to figure out how does all of that fit to the original question. I need some guidance.
Honorable Minister, you know better. If it's a new question, it's your prerogative whether you respond or you don't.
I think it's a completely new question.
Thank
I
you.
mean, it's a difficult question for you to answer.
No, Honorable Mani, don't do that. No, Honorable, you know the rules. I've been saying them all along.
Let me help me, Honorable Manya. That question relates to structural reforms. We're not dealing about structural reforms for now.
Thank you. If you read 1426, it will tell you what to do when you respond, when you ask follow-up question, irrespective of a new question. It's there, clear. What is it, Honorable Mam Kaula?
Siyakotola.
Okay. I did complain before, so I realized some people want warmth in the coldness. I decided to be quiet. Honorable Hendricks.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Minister, tax hikes are on the radar, and government and the executive are blamed by Honorable Dr. George for the hampering of economic growth and breakdown of consumer confidence. Should the banks manipulating the rand and some captains of industry who want to create a climate for regime change not be blamed as articulated by the minister in the presidency? And to avoid the tax hikes that Honorable George is worried about, what about a rand manipulating tax for banks? Would you consider this for next year?
Proceed, Honorable Minister. It's in your court.
I'm in an unfortunate position because I'm being asked irrelevant questions to the original one.
Thank you.
Is
That's
irrelevant,
what I want you
but
to
what
do.
I can say is the honorable member, to his benefit, cabinet would issue a statement in this regard.
Thank you. As we proceed to question 790, asked to the Minister of Mineral Resources by the Honorable Chobeka Makeke. The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members. As was recommended by the Portfolio Committee, the department did undertake a comprehensive review of basic fuel price. We did undertake it. And which is used to make a monthly price adjustment of the country. The BFP has and continues to serve as a reliable balancing the need of the interest of the consumer and the need of the manufacturer. Now, and it is used by all importers of refined petroleum products. The review of BFP indicates that 15% premium that had been imposed at the height of piracy in the routes used for shipping fuel was no longer necessary. And therefore the 15% premium was removed from freight cost component of the basic fuel price. So that 15% is no longer an issue. It's not there. It was removed. The remove 15% premium actually reduced the fuel price by 18 cents at the time. That is 18 cents per liter at the time. That was the effect of that reduction. Now, the basic fuel price is an import pricing principle that all countries that import petroleum products use as a methodology to calculate the import cost. First, the cost of the fuel will be based on grades that are applicable to specific country. Secondly, the freight cost, which is the cost of shipping from international market to receiving portion entry into the country. The coastal stock holding and the financing will be different based on each country's security of supply policy. Otherwise, all the elements of import parity pricing principle in South Africa are similar. And the BFP therefore makes provision for the importers to hold stock for 25 days at the coastal storage facility. The 25-day stock should be seen as a buffer stock that is to be held in case there is a global fuel supply challenges. Holding that stock for 25 days requires ongoing financing of the stock, and the stock is financed through prime rate minus 2%. And the 25-day stock cannot be equated to stock that is used on an ongoing basis. It is a buffer stock. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Makeke, Chobeka Makeke.
Thank you, House Chair. We are traveling as the Portfolio Committee of Minerals and Energy. Follow-up question. Honorable Minister, do the oil companies physically hold product stock equivalent to 25 days for the stock financing element? And is this stock holding reported to the department? I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable, the Minister.
It is the requirement, and the assumption is that they do keep the stock. But from time to time, there is an inspection of whether that stock is kept. We have not found major deviations from that. Therefore, our assumption is that companies do keep the 25-day stock as a buffer for in case of challenges in the market.
Thank you. Honorable Mailam.
Thank you, House Chair. Minister, a year and a half ago, I wrote you a letter co-signed by more than 130,000 South Africans, in which I requested that you and the Minister of Finance deregulate the fuel price and slash the exorbitant fuel taxes in order to minimize the impact of fuel price increases on the cost of living of ordinary South Africans. Now, of course, the fuel price doesn't affect ANC ministers in your government-sponsored vehicles, living in your government-sponsored homes, but ordinary people are suffering under spiraling fuel costs. What has your department done to remove the taxes and levies included in the basic fuel price, which currently funds the corruption and maladministration of the ANC government, and make fuel more affordable for all South Africans? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
I always give you this answer, Honorable Mela. I will give it to you again. One of the things that I know that I'm in government now is that tax, finance, funding, money belongs to the treasury. That is the Minister of Finance. So the fuel tax and fuel levy belong to the Minister of Finance, and I have no authority to remove it. And now, just listen. Actually, you know, one time I had a discussion on this matter, and I said to them, why don't we do this and scrap RAF? And actually, the conclusion was that it will be hard hitting to the poor than to the elite. And therefore, it's up to us to think that we can't pay that tax to cushion the implication for the poor. And that is the proposal you are making, that remove that tax. If the poor is involved in an accident, they must sit to finish. And I don't think it's a wise advice, Honorable Miller.
Thank you. Honorable Keza? Honorable Keza? Honorable Msimang?
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Honorable Minister, have there been any steps taken thus far by your department to implement said recommendation of the Portfolio Committee? If not, why not? And if so, what are the relevant details? Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member, Honorable Minister.
I think the Honorable Member didn't listen to the response. The response was, as was recommended by the Portfolio Committee, the department did undertake the comprehensive review of the basic fuel price methodology. We did that. We also gave the response that as a result of that, the 15% was removed, saving 18 cents per liter to the consumer. So that answer is still relevant.
Thank you. The next question is to the Minister of Employment and Labor. Honorable Keza, what's wrong? I'm done with that question. You were not there to respond as I called you more than twice. I'm now on the next question. On employment and labor by Honorable Heron, the Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Aaron, for this very important question, which reflects thinking outside in the box in order to deal with the fiscal constraints. Let me start by saying, I shudder to think what would have happened if we did not have the UIF during the COVID-19 induced lockdown. And the UIF contributed 65 billion to 5 million laid-off workers and their families during the COVID-19 pandemic. It saved businesses. It protected jobs. It became a platform for the country to rise again. And Honorable Heron, as you know, both funds received their contributions from the employers and employees. And UIF in particular is funded by 2% of the salaries, where the employees and employers contribute equally. So the economy, of course, is not doing well, which means the demand for the UIF is high and therefore it needs to be fully funded. On the other hand, compensation fund is funded by the employer's contributions. Both funds are described as defined contributions and defined benefits. So the use of the funds is prescribed in both acts that establish them. And both funds are looking at contributing towards the 2 million jobs plan to reduce unemployment. And I'm very mindful that the departments, the public entities, and state agencies have the obligation to spend allocated budgets prudently and according to the relevant laws and regulations in whatever we want to use or want to tap from those funds. We must follow proper processes of consultations and approvals. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Heron.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister. I think, Minister, we do have to acknowledge the impact of the COVID-19 or the UIF funds in the COVID-19 crisis, the TERS funds, and the role that the UIF excess played. But given our low economic growth and poor job creation reality, the state should be responding with some sort of appropriate stimulus package, a package that would increase domestic demand, investment, and employment. We have read about the plan to use UIF funds to create 2 million jobs before the end of March at a cost to the UIF of 15 billion rand. But if those jobs are EPWP or temporary jobs, then we should really regard them as poverty alleviation interventions rather than job creation. But there are other options that we could consider for the use of the UIF excess funds that have accumulated. So has the government considered the impact of a stimulus package using UIF accumulated excess funds that includes a contributions holiday? This would mean an effective increase in both workers' and employers' revenues or incomes. It could stimulate demand and provide much protection against high food prices, and it could be a stimulus to the economy. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Heron. The UIF currently is funding a number of projects. The Temporary Employer-Employee Scheme, which is TERS, which is processed through the CCMA and is a salary relief or a salary relief scheme to help companies turn around during this period of distress. That's very important to know that. And also through the IDC, we are funding companies also in distress. The Productivity South Africa assists companies with the turnaround solutions. So there are various programs. Some are short-term, which we would call them work readiness programs for the young people to be able to get into those jobs. Some are medium-term, and some are long-term programs. And amongst other things which we are debating now, we're also talking about the issue of the wage subsidy, where we have to assist in some of the companies paying a particular percentage of the wages in order to be able to absorb a lot of people. Those are debates. So even the 15 billion people are talking about, it's not money which has been used. It is the thinking which we've been talking about, the proposals we're talking about, which still has to go through the different structures for approval. And I want to emphasize that because other people are even talking about, you want to use this, talking about 2 million jobs within a period of 4 months. It's not there, it's nonsense what they are saying. The issue is government programs, whether they are elections or no elections, whether it's the end of the financial year or not, are continuing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The second supplementary question will be asked by Honorable MJ Volmanas. Maras, over to you, Honorable Member on the virtual platform.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, in light of the answers that you have just given, and in light of the possible utilization of the funds in questions, as far as this is concerned, what are the plans that you have in place to utilize these funds in the event these funds cannot be utilized in assisting the fiscus reduce the fiscal consolidation? What plans are there in place currently or in the future?
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
No, our plans are very clear. We've talked about, as part of our UIF's labor activation program, were very important components. We've talked about the employability enhancement program, which enhances the employability of the unemployed and enables entrepreneurship and preserves jobs by integrating the unemployed people back to the labor market. We've talked about the business turnaround and recovery, which we want to implement through the Productivity South Africa, and is intended to enhance the productive capacity and operational efficiencies of the various enterprises throughout the business life cycle in order to preserve the jobs. But we're also planning with the other departments, about 7 departments. We are talking about workplace readiness, we are talking about skills development, we're also talking about partnerships with the private sector. We're hard in discussions with the private sector under the program, which is coordinated by the president with the CEOs. The issue of job creation, the issue of work readiness and skills development is part of all the plans which we are talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The third supplementary question will be asked by Honorable MJ Kato.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just say that given this government's track record of corruption and waste, as well as the parlous administrative state of the UIF and the compensation fund, many claimants don't receive their benefits. Giving the state the keys to surplus funds in order to ease fiscal constraints is probably not a good idea. Minister, we learn from media reports, and we've heard it echoed here today, that you've instructed the department to spend 15 billion rand in UIF and labor activation program funds to create these 2 million so-called work opportunities before the end of the financial year in March. With December being a dead month, that amounts to blowing 15 billion rand in a very short space of time. And we all know that these short-term work opportunities are not real jobs. But clearly you are in panic mode, having failed to meet your job creation targets, and you're now trying to shore up the ANC's vote ahead of next year's elections. Minister, can you tell this House why this mad idea is not a recipe for unbridled looting?
Thank you so much.
And how it will be different
The Honourable
to the
Minister.
capital deal?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thanks to the honorable member. You have said in the very same parliament, unemployment is one of the biggest crises we're facing. You have said in this parliament, most of your members have said that when they are debating the economy. When we come up with interventions to massify, you're talking about waste. We don't know what you are talking about. We have agreed that we must respond to the challenge of unemployment. We must massify the programs. And we are saying, and we're talking about, we are left with 3 months. The programs of government are multi-year. Some of the proposals here, you're talking about a 1-year program, you're talking about 2 years, you're talking about 3 years. We're not talking about the end of the financial year. We are talking about multi-year programs to respond to the unemployment in this particular country. And even the 15 billion you're talking about, please don't howl, just listen because I listened to you. You see, the 15 billion which we are talking about, it's the proposals to say, as part of the massification, we have to add these programs. And we have said, before we can be able to recall that money, we have to go through the processes in order to be able to make sure that that money has been approved by the necessary structures. It's as simple as that. It has nothing to do with what you are saying, it's a corrupt scheme. Unemployment is the biggest crisis now as we speak. We can't just be sitting with resources invested in some companies when we're faced with the biggest problem in the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Order, honourable members, order. Order, honourable members. The fourth supplementary question will be asked by Honourable S.N. Swart. Honourable Swart. Okay, you shall forfeit. Thank you very much. Question 791 has been asked by the Honourable S.W. Mdabe to the Honourable Minister of Employment and Labour. The Honourable Minister.
Oh, and okay. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Chairperson. The response to Honorable Ndabe is that the plans in place have already begun to deliver, in that the audited annual financial statements of the previous year for the UIF was tabled in Parliament on the 31st of October 2023. Plans now are working towards getting the 2022-2023 audited financial statement report being tabled in Parliament. The 2022-23 annual financial statements and the performance report will be submitted to the AG on the 30th of November 2023. So the AG's audit takes 2 months to finalize, but due to the December holidays, we anticipate it may take 3 months. And based on the above activities, it is anticipated that the 2023 annual report will be ready not later than the end of June 2024. When it comes to the compensation fund, in 2022, the entity requested the postponement of the 2021-22 audit to address the prior year errors. So the 2022 financial statement was submitted on the 31st May 2023, and the audit was finalized on the 6th of September 2023. So the 2023 financial years can only be finalized once the CF receives the 2021-22 audited financial statements from the AG. So the 2022-23 financials were therefore submitted to the AG on the 31st of October 2023 for audit. And AG is currently conducting that 2022-23 audit. The anticipated timelines for completing the audit is end of January 2024. So the annual report will be submitted end of March 2023, which is the accepted 2 months timeline required for CF to incorporate the updated financials from the audit and allow the AG to conduct a further audit on the annual report before tabling to Parliament. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. The first supplementary question will be asked by Honorable S.W. Ndabe. Over to you.
Thank you.
Honorable Nontsele.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the follow-up question is as follows. Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your detailed response to my question. The question is, Honorable Minister, whether you are considering to reform the two entities, and if so, how will this improve efficiency in the entities? Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Comrade Nontsele. I indicated that right at the beginning of my term that the two funds have to be dragged out of the deep hole. We are working on two projects currently. For the first project, we appointed the PwC to review the current UIF and CF structures and propose a structure that would enable both funds to be fit for purpose. So the report has been finalized and presented at the Cabinet for approval. And as Minister, I believe that the independent project management team will be able to implement the proposed structure. Hence, I sought the approval from the Cabinet, which was granted. So the second project is the separation of the two funds from the department. And for this project, we are using the GTEC at National Treasurer to assist in looking at the permutations that can be considered to make this possible. GTEC has submitted and presented their first report for consideration. So clearly, work is being done in order to fundamentally relook at the structures, at the systems, at the skills, and so on. Unless we do that, but in a systematic way, we are not going to be able to turn those funds around.
Thank you. The second supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Beckham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, I know the answer, but it begs the question. Do you really not have the capacity to have an audit done immediately. Minister, are you covering up for the well-connected ANC cadres who have sticky fingers? I'm not waving a small bag of coins like a miserable weasel. I'm referring to possible grand-scale theft of 5 billion rand, an allegation of 3 billion rand, and now the mother of all crimes.
Honorable Matuba, may you just, ICT, just take that member out of the system, please. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yes, no, she's out now. It's fine, you may proceed.
So I'm referring to the grand scale theft of 5 billion, 3 billion, and now the mother of all crimes, 15 billion. A billion here and a billion there. Soon we're talking about serious money, Minister. What are you doing about it?
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
You see,
Order, honorable members. It's too loud. You
You're
can
ta-
heckle,
you're
but you
talking
can't
about-
just converse.
a grand scale theft. If that was allowed, I would not be in court today to stop that. The fact that I am in court, no, don't worry. I had to follow the processes before we can be able to go to court. I had to look for very clear legal opinions from 3 different counsel to be able to say when we go to court, we're very sure of what we are talking about. And these are the processes which must be followed. Interview everybody before you come to a conclusion. So this grand scale theft which you are talking about, I'm not sure what you mean. The 15 billion, we are just making a lot of propaganda, which has not even been approved, which we have not started using it. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. The third supplementary question will be asked by Honorable H. Danner on the visual platform.
Thank you, House Chair. Honourable Minister, you and I have had this conversation at one of our portfolio committee meetings with regards to the problem with staff within the UIF and Compensation Fund who do not actually do what they are expected to do. And you've mentioned now that the company was appointed to look at the systemic overall of the structures of the UIF, for instance, but there's just too many plans and strategies hanging in the air. Now, you have spoken out against calls for the Unemployment Insurance Fund to be placed under administration. So I'd like to know, Minister, do you believe that the management overall will address the problems at the UIF? And if so, how will this be affected if the fund is not placed under administration? And if not, what is the root cause and how will it be addressed in order to solve the problems at the UIF so people can get the necessary services they need from this fund? Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Minister, you'll use your discretion. There are 5 questions.
No. You see, the problem Honorable Dana does not understand. There are not too many plans. There's only one plan. A plan which has been informed by a detailed diagnostic conducted by a reputable company, PwC, which looks into the different elements, looks at the structure, looks at the strategy, looks at the skills, and looks at the people. These are the areas which we are looking at. And we have agreed in order to turn this around, yes, there's a lot of limitations of the people who are inside that. Because it's like you're running a bank, you're running an insurance company. The skills which you need to run those entities are the skills which are outside in the private sector. That's why we are now talking about a project management office, which is going to pool those skills seconded from the private sector, who are going to also help us and work with those who are inside. And in order to turn this around, we've done it before. It has been done in public works, and we are continuing with that particular, to say partnerships with the with the private sector, with people with the necessary skills. It is going to help us. It's one project which is trying to turn these 2 funds around, not many projects. Thank you.
Thank you. The 4th supplementary question will be asked by Honorable C.N. Mkhonto.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, you are talking about the restructuring of the UIF and the compensation fund. What are what will come first? Is it the 15 billion job stimulus, or will it be the restructuring of the two funds? And if the stimulus will come first according to your plans or what you are envisaging, what are the preventative measures do you have to make sure that those people, the people who defrauded the COVID-19 TERS, the UIF through the COVID-19 TERS, such activities don't repeat themselves? Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
Honorable Mkonto, nothing says that if you are restructuring or unbundling something or a company, business must stop. There's nothing like that. Whilst we continue restructuring, we're fixing it in the air. We must continue delivering the services. Services will continue delivering. The issue of job creation and the programs which we're running are going to continue. But what we have to do is to ensure that we tightened on our safety measures. That's why, for instance, we have said in any programs now as we run them, we are going to put the audit firms and what we would call top-level project managers. We're going to monitor on a quarterly basis. We get the reports on how those companies are performing and reports, financial reporting on what they are doing. It's part of the measures which we're going to adopt. But we can't, there's no way that we can say, in the midst of the crisis of unemployment, we're just going to sit and say restructuring first until such time that we've finished that process. What if that process, we've been told by a number of people that it can take 3 to 4, 5 years to restructure them to come to where you want them to be. Work must continue. We must continue paying the benefits of the different workers which they did. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable members, question 814 has been asked by Honorable D.W. Brecht to Honorable Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. Over to you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. And let me at the outset say that our department is very concerned about the current crime spike that is taking place on Table Mountain. And since the 13th of November, we have been working with SANParks, the South African Police Services, the City of Cape Town and the Western Cape Government to revive the Table Mountain Safety Forum and to share intelligence and officer deployment so that we can improve the safety outcomes on the mountain. With regard to the concern that the team members of SEAM are operating without firearms due to the expiry of firearm licenses, this is not the case. Those who have suitable qualifications have got firearm licenses. There are others who at the moment are not compliant with the Firearms Control Act. And on the 22nd and the 23rd of November, they underwent intensive formal reassessment so that they are compliant with the Firearms Control Act and they can then be issued with the relevant firearms.
Thank you. The first supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Brent. Over to you.
Thank you for the response, Minister. Minister, in terms of the SEAM unit, we've also heard that the unit currently doesn't have a manager in place and that their numbers are dropping quite significantly from 18 to 15 at present. We do know the City of Cape Town is already going above and beyond to provide additional security in the shape of law enforcement officers and other technology and has successfully helped to carry out many operations on and around the mountain. And this is the type of intergovernmental cooperation that we need. But all spheres do need to come to the party. And Table Mountain National Park has an annual income of 300 million rand, yet only 97 million, a third of that's actually being spent on the mountain in the face of growing concerns around safety. According to the reports, the City of Cape Town's calculated that with 200 million rand, we could provide 400 dedicated and armed law enforcement officers for the mountain, which is 5 times more than at present. Can the Minister give more context as to why only a third of the revenue being generated is being spent on Table Mountain, and what is being done to increase the number of rangers on the mountain? Thank you.
Thank you, the Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Bryant. I think that what you know is that SANParks operates as a unit. We have 19 national parks. Table Mountain National Park, specifically Cape Point and the Boulders facility, are the big revenue generators. And that revenue is shared, as is the Kruger revenue, with all the parks, all 19 parks. So that is why not all of that revenue is allocated to Table Mountain National Park. One of the complexities we both know is that Table Mountain National Park is an open access park. So unlike other parks where we have fences, gate controls, and so on, the safety issues are much more complicated. Because we are concerned and because we believe that it is a very important tourist facility, we have met with the Tourism Business Council of South Africa, and we have asked them if they could assist us with funding the services of 84 supplementary security personnel over the period of the 1st of December to the 31st of March. These security personnel will patrol, they will liaise with other security clusters, they'll protect property and staff, they'll apprehend trespassers and report incidents. So we are hopeful that this partnership will take place, and we are doing everything we can to secure it. Obviously, what we hope is by that stage, we will have sorted out the qualifications of the SEAM task members so that we would also have more armed personnel on the ground going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The second supplementary question will be asked Honourable TVB Mkuno. Honourable Member, you may take it from the House. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I will take question on behalf of Honourable Mkuno. Minister, what is the plan in place to ensure the safety in key national parks, which are areas of tourist destination, especially since we are heading into a festive season? And what have been identified as a challenges to be addressed to ensure safety in these areas? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Gela. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I think I've already spoken about what we are doing with the Tourism Council to try and improve safety on Table Mountain and the surrounding national park. Another crime hotspot, as we all know, is some of the approach roads to the Kruger National Park, particularly the road that goes to the Kruger Gate. What we are doing there is similarly, we are working with the Business Council to put, well, they have in fact for some time put armed security on that road. We have also done extensive liaison work with communities who live along that road to explain the importance of tourism for the revenue at the park and also for the jobs that the park provides for the surrounding communities, as well as the opportunities the park provides for SMMEs to sell goods and services, as well as tourism offerings in the park itself. We found that this approach is quite good, and that there has become more interest in the surrounding communities in helping to protect visitors traveling on that road. And obviously, we will be monitoring the situation closely to see whether this approach is yielding the desired results. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The third supplementary question will be asked by Honourable M.N. Paulson. Honorable Paulson.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, Minister. Minister, the incidence of attacks in our national parks and mountains is not new. And there are new technologies, Minister, in the form of drone technologies that can, if implemented properly, drastically reduce, if not eradicate, criminality in our mountains. Has the department considered this technology to ensure the safety of visitors to our parks and mountains? And I think, Minister, it was mentioned before in one of the previous questions, the ANC government must not fear technology. It's here to stay. It's going to get better and it can make our lives better. So what are the chances of your department adopting newer technologies to provide for the safety and security of visitors and public to the national parks and game reserves? Thank you very much.
Thank you, the Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Paulson, and I agree with you that it's important not to fear technology. Part of the successes we've had in combating rhino poaching have been through the usage of more advanced technology. At the moment, we do have a no-fly zone policy over the national parks, because once you allow drones, you would understand that people who have wrong intentions can also be flying those drones. So there is some feasibility going on with regard to the usage of drones. But part of what we've got to work out is how would we then be able to enforce the no-fly policy so that it would only be drones that would be under our control that would be able to do that patrolling. We would also have to look at what are the implications if you are doing aerial surveillance for the availability of that information. As you know, one of the concerns that we have specifically in Kruger is that there have been instances in the past of involvement of our own staff in rhino poaching. So we agree that this is important technology that must be considered. We are looking into some pilot possibilities, but we're also concerned about the unintended consequences, and we have to make sure that we can manage those appropriately first before we engage this new technology. Thank you.
Thank you. The last, which is the fourth supplementary question on this, it will be asked by Honorable N. Singh. Honorable
Thank you.
Singh.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you, Honourable Minister, for your response. I think it is quite evident that the incidences of crime are getting relatively out of control in this very, very important area. I know everybody in South Africa and many outside of South Africa, when they visit when they visit Cape Town, they want to go to Table Mountain. Now, having said that, Minister, I think it's encouraging that you've indicated that you'll increase rangers within a specific period. Now, the question I will ask, will you consider that in your budget for next year, you have more rangers that can be employed, and that one supports what could be called a Table Mountain community watch? Just like we have neighborhood watches, I don't know if there's an established community watch in that area that can be supported. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Singh. I think that we have a very active community forum that works on Table Mountain National Park, and they have 4 subcommittees, one of which is a safety committee. I suppose the issue we would need to consider, because what we know is that the attacks that are happening there currently are armed attacks. We would have to consider the utilization of reservists or other persons who would operate in a voluntary capacity but would have the right to bear arms. And of course, that's a complicated issue because there's also various human rights issues concerned. So we're not opposed to the issue that you are suggesting, but we have to make sure that it would be in terms of relevant legislation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Question 2829 has been asked by Honorable B.J. Mkhwebane to the Honorable Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies. The Honorable Minister.
Sakubona sisibusi. Thank you, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members. The relocation of Ikwekwezi FM from Pretoria to Auckland Park was done as part of SABC cost-cutting initiatives, wherein a number of offices were identified throughout the country to be closed to save on rental and the other operational costs. The Hatfield office was one of the identified offices, which meant that Ikwekwezi FM would need to be relocated to Auckland Park. This move did not have any negative impact on the station's delivery, on its mandate or ICASA regulations. The station is licensed to broadcast quality news, which it's doing, educational and informative programs in isiNdebele, 24 hours per day, 7 days per week. I also listen to it at times. Furthermore, the SABC implemented very minimal changes to the station's programming operations. The station is still making use of the same transmitter network that it was using before the relocation, which means that it is still reaching its target audience. In terms of the geographic spread of audiences, majority of the Ikwekwezi FM listeners are spread across Mpumalanga, Gauteng, and Limpopo, which means that any one of these regions can play host to the station. Lastly, the development in technology which have been embraced by SABC allow listeners to access their favorite radio station from anywhere in the world, even if Ikwekwezi were to be put in London.
Thank you. The first supplementary question will be asked by Honorable B.J. Mkhwebane. Over to you.
Lochani Baba. According to ICASA regulations, when the issue of license is issued, it is compulsory that the station should be where the listeners reside. So in Mpumalanga, it's so unfortunate that all the radio stations which are broadcasting in African languages are based in the provinces where their listeners are residing, all of them. It's only Ikwekwezi and Ligwalagwala, the Mpumalanga combo, which were moved and were targeted with that cost-cutting measure. And this has an impact irrespective of whether you are in London or wherever to listen to Ligwalagwala or Ikwekwezi. But the fact of the matter is, this then robbed the people of Mpumalanga to have these two stations based either in Witbank or Middleburg to create economic activities, not only about listening, but as well all the issues. And the quality is terrible, to tell you, Minister, because that's the complaint which is being received. So why are these two discriminated when there is cost-cutting measures and the benefits which the Mpumalanga people are losing as far as creating economic activity for the communities of Mpumalanga? Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Member.
Honorable members, we are too close to each other. And we can hardly hear the minister. Please, both sides.
Thank you, Honorable Member. What I want to say is that I don't want to talk to the regulation that you've already spoken about, because it's not something I've applied my mind to. But what is fundamental is that the people of the audience of Ikwekwezi are entitled to the content that is generated in that station. As I'm sitting here, sometimes I listen to 702, I don't even know where it is located. What is important is that when I switch on, I'm able to listen to that and actually get everything I want. I'm not sure whether it is the main concern of the people of this audience that you are raising. But if you have facts in that regard, you can actually forward them so that we can deal with them. Where we are, we say the target audience, the content and everything, we are serving them as required. But if you think there's a change in content, we're willing to entertain it if you can forward it. Thank you, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The second supplementary question will be asked by Honorable A.H. Mtembu. Honorable Mtembu.
I'll take that one.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair.
Honorable Alice Mtembu, there's a member who have already stood up in the House. Thank you. You may proceed, member in the House.
Thank you.
Thank you, House Chair. Minister, what have been the evident financial and non-financial benefits of moving Ikwekwezi FM from the city of Tshwane to Auckland Park in Johannesburg? You can't hear?
Honorable member, you are too tall. Probably if you can take my counsel to sit down so that the minister can hear.
Minister, I hope you can hear me now. What have been the evident financial and non-financial benefit of moving Ikwekwezi FM from the city of Tshwane to Auckland Park in Johannesburg? Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister, I hope it's better now. Honorable the Minister.
We've not looked at those stats as the stats we need to follow, Honorable Member. It's a very important question. But I also wanted to state that it's not only this station, by the way, that has been moved, Honorable, for me to come back to. Even the True FM in the what to call from Bishop has been moved to. The key issue, Honorable Members, is that there are moments when the institution is going through tough time. You've got to make tough choices and to keep the station afloat. So when you make those choices, you take the choice that keep the station afloat. The decisions that have been taken around that station is what keep it afloat, is where I am. But we're always willing to learn from whatever information that makes us think better than the decision we actually, that makes us think better than the basis that led us to the decision that we have taken. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The third supplementary question will be asked by Honorable T. Bodlani. Honorable Bodlani.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Honorable Minister, as per your response, radio stations can operate from anywhere and be listened to anyone across the world. Does the minister plan on moving any more stations? Which ones and by when? Thank you.
Thank you, the Honorable Minister.
As we continue to actually help the entire SABC on the recovery course, we take decisions depending on the situation at any given point in time. If tomorrow there's a need to, in consideration of the key factors that determine keeping SABC afloat, we will look at that when we cross the bridge. For now, we don't have it at our disposal.
Can we, thank you, Honorable Minister. I think there's an honorable member struggling with the gadget and there's music that is coming through. The last question, which is the fourth question, will be asked by Honorable Zet Machosi. Honorable Machosi.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Minister, the South African Broadcasting Commission stated that the relocation of Ikwekwezi radio station does not alter the entity strategy for the station, as the decision was based on minimizing operational cost. Considering this, what is the strategy the entity has for the radio station? Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
I'm not sure if I heard the Honorable Member.
Unfortunately, she's not going to repeat it.
Eh?
I'm not going to allow her to repeat it.
Can she repeat?
Oh, you are requesting that she can repeat
Yes.
Okay, and also to
And
be
if-
little, yeah, okay, no, that's fine. Honorable Machosi, the minister didn't hear you. If you can just be slowly because you are within your time. Honorable Machosi, are you still on the platform?
Yes, thank you, House Chairperson. Honorable Minister, the South African Broadcasting Commission stated that the relocation of Ikwekwezi radio station does not alter the entity's strategy for the station, as the decision was based on minimizing operational costs. Considering this, what is the strategy the entity has for the radio station? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Majosi. The Honorable Minister.
The strategy of all the entities of SABC are about delivering on the public mandate of the institution in line with the specific audience that you are allocated to. It applies to Ikwekwezi FM in terms of culture, the diversity they must protect, informative exercise, ensuring that they broadcast the news, they create opportunities for the audience to engage on South African matters. The strategy find expression in that context.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, we shall proceed to question 792 that has been asked by Honorable K.E. Magaqa to the Honorable Minister in the Presidency for Electricity. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and just to say
Chair.
thank you very much to Madam Chair, thanks, and thank you very much to Honorable Magaqa for the question. Just to mention that according to regulatory requirements, ESCOM publishes a transmission development plan, in short TDP, every year. And this TDP has got a 10-year horizon. The TDP identifies infrastructure that is required to, amongst others, keep abreast of load growth, comply with reliability redundancy requirements, meet new generation integration requirements, and replace assets that are at end of life. In the TDP 2022, ESCOM identifies 1,009 projects requiring development and execution. This comprises 207 expansion category projects and 802 refurbishment projects over this period. The identified scope of in TDP 2022 broadly involves building 14,218 kilometers of power lines and 122,669 MVA of transformers. This infrastructure will be built in all provinces around the country, with the bulk of the being in the provinces such as the Northern Cape, Eastern Cape, and the Western Cape that have the greatest potential for renewable energy power plants. And of course, we know that in these locations, transmission capacity is either depleted or on the verge of being depleted, therefore undermining our ability to exploit this resource endowment. The Ministry in the Presidency for Electricity co-hosted a transmission financing seminar with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and is currently finalizing a cabinet submission on transmission financing pathways aimed at fast-tracking transmission infrastructure investments to support the anticipated growth in generation capacity and secure long-term energy security. We will announce the financing options once Cabinet has pronounced itself, but the following are known. First is that the ESCOM balance sheet is severely constrained and the fiscal matrix has deteriorated. Therefore, our ability to draw from the fiscus or to look at corporate financing is limited. We have every intention of dipping into the deep liquidity that is sitting with the private sector to make it possible for us to be able to meet the expansion and modernization requirements of transmission. This will be underpinned by a number of principles. The first one is that the state will remain the owner of transmission. Secondly is that whatever option we are taking should not place a disproportionate and onerous requirements on the end user from a tariff point of view. And lastly, that the system operator will be overall in charge of the management of the system. And this is how we will approach the expansion and modernization of transmission infrastructure by tapping into the deep liquidity that is sitting with the private sector. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Minister. The first supplementary question will be asked by Honorable K.E. Makat.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Comrade Minister, does the government have any contingency plan in place for the construction of 3,000 kilometers of transmission grid as part of ESCOM's short-term turnaround objective if the National Transmission Company of South Africa does not get any lender concerned at all, or the lender concerned is delayed?
Thank you, Honorable Member, the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to make the point that in the foreseeable future, and that I mean in the next 3 years, ESCOM has got sufficient capital requirements to be able to meet the expansion. But the rate at which we want to accelerate the expansion will require that we look at additional sources outside the ESCOM supported balance sheet. And it is for this reason that we are looking at multiplicity of options that will be available to us to ensure that we are able to aggressively expand and modernize the transmission so that we are able to accommodate new sources of generation, in particular renewables that are located in areas of significant transmission capacity deficit. As mentioned earlier, this will be our Cape provinces of the Northern Cape, Eastern Cape, and the Western Cape. So the long and short is that we'll seek to buttress the resources that are sitting with the ESCOM, like I said, in terms of their own projection going into the future, the next 3 years. They have that capital instrument available, but the rate and pace at which we want to roll out this transmission infrastructure will require of us to look at other transmission financing sources. And that's why we are expanding the flow of those options to ensure that we go beyond the fiscals, we go beyond the ESCOM balance sheet, and we tap into the liquidity that is sitting with the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you. The second supplementary question will be asked by Honorable J.K. Mayhem. Over to you.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Minister, our transmission infrastructure is outdated and incapable of meeting demand as a result of ANC incompetence and mismanagement. We saw evidence of this during the REIPP bid window 6, in which a number of potential independent power producers were disqualified because of a lack of transmission capacity. So your comments about investment in the transmission development plan are very welcome. And yet, much of our grid remains tied up in allocations for projects like car power ships, Minister Mantashe, that have failed to meet the bid criteria and are unlikely to ever see the light of day. In the face of stage 5 and 6 load shedding, what is your government doing to terminate those projects and free up grid resources for other independent power producers to connect more generation capacity to the grid as quickly as possible?
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thanks for the question. I think your understanding of the configuration of the South African grid does not appreciate the historic context of the density of the grid. Remember that how the grid is configured is such that the power stations are located at the mouth of the fuel source. And in this instance, the fuel source is cheap and bad quality coal that is located in the Highveld area. And that's why you have the density of the grid that is located in those areas. So it has no relationship with what is alleged to be ANC mismanagement. It's just an appreciation of the fuel source and the kind of agenda that we're pursuing in order for us to be able to generate sufficient capacity to meet the growth of the country. So the two are not related, assuming that your allegation is correct, but it's a fact of history and also just engineering, just the configuration of the grid. And then when we come to the issues of powership is a process that is spearheaded by the IPP office. I have no business to enter into the space of procurement. It's following its own regulatory processes. They must get the licenses as required, but as part of getting to financial close, they had to get grid access and they complied with the rules that govern our emergency procurement. So it's not my intention to reconfigure or revise the rules in the middle of the game. It will find its way within the legal framework so that it will be left to that legal framework. But to the extent that we want to connect the new renewable energy capacity, I've made the point in responding to Honorable Magata's question that yes, we want to expand and modernize the grid by about 14,000 kilometers in the next 10 years, and the concentration of that expansion and modernization will be in the Cape provinces. Thanks.
Thank you. The third supplementary question will be asked by Honorable M. Mani.
Thank you, House Chair. Minister, the people of South Africa are nervous and suspicious. Could the minister once and for all clarify the stance of government on privatization of Eskom? The National Transmission Company of South Africa helps to bring more context into this. It's like the World Bank has captured Eskom. What is the extent of the involvement of World Bank on Eskom? And why did the minister need the Eskom consent, need the consent of World Bank to do whatever restructuring the entity needed to do? Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
No, thank you very much. I nearly said Brajimi, Honorable Mani, yes, because I'm familiar with him outside this space. I apologize. I apologize for that. I thought that the initial question was on transmission, and I'm going to confine myself to the issues of transmission in relation to the dismembering of Eskom and undermining vertical integration. And to the best of my recollection, and in fact, this is fact, is that there is no intention to privatize the transmission company of South Africa. It will remain a subsidiary of Eskom, and as we know that Eskom still remains an SOE, and government is 100% shareholder. In terms of ensuring that we get to a stage where we are able to establish a transmission company, we needed to get 3 licenses. The one is a transmission license. The other one is an import and export license. The other one is a trading license. And those licenses have been issued. The next stage is to appoint the board of directors, and the Minister Godan is hard at work to ensure that, working with the board, of course, because it's a subsidiary of Eskom Holdings, if you like, to ensure that we're able to appoint a board of directors. And the public commitments that the minister has made was that that those appointments will be made very soon. And then in relation to the options that we'll be exercising, I did make the point earlier on that the underlying principles in us tapping into private sector liquidity will be, amongst others, the fact that the state will not be retrenched. By that, I mean the state remains the sole custodian of the ownership of the transmission. And this is a best practice across the world, is a national strategic asset, and the state is not about to relinquish ownership of the national strategic asset. And that's the approach that we are taking. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The fourth supplementary question will be asked by Honorable S.N. Swart.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the ACDP appreciates that substantial additional capacity will be required, and of course, additional capital funding will be required for the expansion of the transmission grid. And Minister, I'm sure you're aware that this could run into hundreds of billions of rand over a period of time. Minister, you indicated tapping into the liquidity of the private sector is an option going forward due to the constraints at Eskom and of course at the fiscus. May I ask you, what steps will you be taking together with the Minister of Finance to ensure that when one taps into the liquidity of the private sector, this will not place Eskom or the transmission company that is going to be set up in a spiral, a debt spiral with debt service costs and exorbitant debt service costs that we've already seen in the past. What steps will you take to ensure that doesn't happen? Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to Honorable Swart. Maybe just to make the point that Minister Chrissy last week communicated the decision of Cabinet on the JET implementation plan. And there's a facility upwards of 12 billion US dollars that is directed at helping us to ensure that we realize, if you like, the elements of just transition. And chief amongst those is investment in relation to transmission. But that's not limited to what the international partners group are offering. We think that there's a significant flow of financing that is required. Our own computation suggests that they will need upwards of 390 billion rands for us to be able to achieve this kind of ambition. I want to commit and make this known to the House and the country that the choices of what constitute the investment, what are the terms and conditions of that, are not prescribed to us. When we make that determination, we make it with the sovereign interest at heart. So everything subordinates to the sovereign interest, and that's how we're going to enter into that space. So there will be no power that is going to prescribe to us. We've got a greater appreciation of what is required for us to be able to expand the grid. And I must say, like, there's a huge or significant amount of appetite, insatiable appetite to invest in this area. But the point I want to impress is that we are not the only one in the globe that are looking for this kind of resources. And it's not like it's ring-fenced just for South Africa. Speed is important, agility is important, addressing the socio-economic imperatives of the country is important. So Honorable Swart, I really want to give you the assurance that all of those will be taken into account when we make these choices going into the future. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, question 785 has been asked by Honorable S.M. Jafta to the Honorable Minister, Minerals, Resources and Energy. Over to you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members. The EIA process was undertaken in accordance to the National Environmental Impact Assessment Regulations. So nothing was shortcut. It was done according to prescriptions. The public participation process was conducted in terms of the principles of the National Environmental Management Act as amended. It's called NEMA. So that was followed to the letter. The Department of Environmental Affairs, public participation guidelines in terms of NEMA, EIA regulations, Department of Environmental Affairs, Pretoria, those were followed to the letter. As evidence in the record of decision for the environmental authorization, the public participation process was carried out in accordance with Regulation 41 and 44 of the NEMA environmental assessment. And the scoping report, environmental impact assessment report, was subjected to a 30-day commenting period. The interested and affected parties were notified, and the project was advertised in newspapers. Several public consultations were held, and consultations with various state departments and organs of state. All comments from interested parties were addressed. So this is very important as a question, because after that, there were appeals after appeal until the affected company left our shores. It ended up in Côte d'Ivoire. They left us and they made discoveries in Côte d'Ivoire, and we stopped here. Which is an issue of choices that we're making as a country. The department implements the National Environmental Management Act, that is NEMA, which seeks to give effect to the provisions of Section 24 of the Constitution. NEMA, amongst others, serve as the general framework within which environmental management implementation plans must be formulated, serve as guidelines by reference to which any organ of state must exercise any function when taking a decision in terms of the Act. or any statutory provision concerning the protection of the environment. One of the issues that we want to emphasize is that whenever we approve those licenses, one of the issues that we never take shortcuts on are the environmental imperatives that must be complied with. Everything else follows after that. The impact assessment process considers various factors prescribed in section 24 of NEMA. These factors include compliance with NEMA, impact assessment, identification of mitigation measures, applicants' ability to implement the mitigation measures, and comply with the prescribed financial provisions, and consider the comments of the organs of state, to name a few. All we're saying is that when we approved the projects there, we took into account all the requirements of law, and there was no deviation, and there was no request for any deviation. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The first supplementary question will be asked by Honorable SM Jafta on the virtual platform.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and thanks to the Minister for the response. Honorable Minister, can you then expand on the intersection between securing ecologically sustainable development and promoting justifiable economic and social development? I'm raising this question, Honorable Minister, because we have seen an increase in eco-justice and NGOs putting more emphasis on ecologically sustainable development while ignoring the primacy of justifiable economic and social development, particularly in a country where the poor live below the poverty line. How can a fine balance be struck between these variables? I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister.
One of the emphasis we always put is that environmental considerations and developmental needs of a country must be balanced. So in other words, you don't just develop anyhow, irresponsibly. You take into account the environmental needs of society. But if you balance them, you will have development and you look after the environment. And our emphasis is that those two must coexist. Because if they don't coexist, one dies and the consequences are dire. If we just push development, we ignore environmental needs, the society is going to pay the price. If we just look into environment and we kill development, then there's a problem. That is the reason that I'm one of the few people who is emphasizing that many of the environmental NGOs that stop development are foreign funded. And that's why I'm putting the point that these NGOs must be registered and they must declare in transparent form their source of funding. Because if we do that, we don't kill them, we don't stop them, but to make them take responsibility for the action they do. Engos.
Thank you. The second supplementary question will be asked by Honorable S. Luzipo.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. My apologies for the not showing the face. We are still on the road. At the backdrop or background of the current COP28 that is in session, as well as our commitment to ensure that we move from high carbon emission to low carbon emission. Does the department does the department have an equitable balance in terms of the economic efficiency and inclusive developmental objective on the one hand, as well as the potential threats to environment, as well, and in particular with regards to the gas exploration of the coast of KwaZulu-Natal. I'm raising this because there is a question whether the department does have a balance between developmental objectives as well as environmental compliance requirements.
Thank you,
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
The Honorable Minister.
Let me be brief on this one. The most important thing is you can't move to the extremes. Any extreme will be dangerous for society. That's why when we talk to people who are advocating movement from fossil fuel to renewables, those are extremes. You move from one extreme to the other. I am I'm propagating multi-path ways to development, but keep your eye on the reduction of from carbon emissions, reduce the carbon emissions, but ensure that there is sustainable development and there is sustainable availability of energy as sources are multiple and they're from various sources. And if we do that, we are careful, we're going to succeed. But there is also another warning that we have been given, that if we want to move from old to new, one of the things we don't do, you never dismantle the old before you test the new and ensure that it is reliable, it is resilient, and it is efficient. So movement must be systematic and it should be managed carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. The third supplementary question will be asked by Honorable J.R.B. Lorima. Honorable Member.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to find out if the department performs economic impact studies during the licensing process. And was that done in this case? And what's the government's estimate of possible beneficial consequences if drilling ever does go ahead off the KZN coast? And more than that, what is the department's assessment of the possible risks of drilling?
There are two questions, Honorable Minister. You'll use your discretion. Over to you.
Yeah, if there are two questions, I have a discretion to answer whichever. I can just use my discretion. What is important here is that we are dealing with a case that is actually a myth now, because ENI has left the coast of KZN. That's one thing was accepted. They ran away from subsequent litigation after litigation and left our shores. So we're moving with an imaginary case that does not exist at this point in time. But what is more important, yes, this is imaginary. They are not here, they've gone. They've gone. But what is important is that if we are careful, we'll do that assessment and balance the economic benefits to the risks that are there in terms of the environment. I always make this point, and some of the people refuse to accept that. I said, if we make breakthroughs, for example, on developing our petroleum sector, the economic growth is going to be different from what we see here. I can assure you, we'll get a GDP growth of 5 to 8% per annum. But it requires us to go through it and be careful not to damage the environment.
Thank you. The last supplementary question will be asked by Prof. Honorable C. Tim Simang. Honorable Simang. Okay, Honorable.
Not the Honorable Chair. Can I take it for him?
Yeah, you nearly missed it. Yes, you may.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I see you seated next to the Minister of Environment, so you're careful about environmental issues there. But sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Now, I want to put it to you, Honorable Minister, that economic challenges, the lack of fuel, the increased price of fuel, or whatever economic challenges, can be mitigated by additional resources being plowed into it. But when there's medium to long-term damage to the environment, our future generations are going to feel that. What is your view on this, Honorable Minister? Thank you.
Thank you, the Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. I want to demystify the assumption first, that development is equal to damaging the environment. So it's quite a funny assumption that we normally make. I've been emphasizing that you balance the two and work for coexistence of economic development and protection of the environment. And that requires regulations, which we do. One of the things that I can see, Ms. Barbara, they will sit next to each other. People think that I will get a punch from you or you'll get a punch from me. It doesn't happen. We do discuss issues because we know the importance of protection of the environment. we know the importance of development of the economy, because both of them are required for today and both of them are required for the future. And there will be no future if you kill development, and there will be no future if you destroy the environment. You need both, you balance the two. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable members, the time allocated for questions has expired. Outstanding replies received would be printed. In hindsight, honorable members, order. No, order, including Mam Kaul. I request members to stand and wait for the chair and the maize to leave the room, and they conclude the business of the day. Maize.